So I'm going to try to get one staple in here at a really funky angle. And then I'm going to cut that little chunk out of there. The little chunk I'm talking about is right in there. I've got to remove the material so that a bolt can pass through that slot. All right, success. So, we'll know in a little bit if that was enough. Have to do both sides and get both sides reinstalled in the car. And then stretch the top back closed to really know if it worked. So this one we're moving down 3/4 of an inch and over a 1/2 inch. This is going to be challenging. I'm going to take off a little more than I did last time. So I made a mental note of where this is. I know it's in line with the bottom because I trimmed it. And I know that the binding right here is like 1/8 of an inch from the end. So when I'm finished, that thing will be 3/8 of an inch past the end, hopefully. And this will be 3/4 of an inch down below because I have to move over a 1/2 inch and down 3/4 of an inch. Now I'm breaking my staple rule, but I'm throwing them off. I got a pile of junk over here I'm throwing them onto. These are legs of staples that broke. All right, no heat. staple gun. So I didn't get much in the way of, just like the other side, not terribly successful at pulling it across here. Might have gotten a little bit, but I certainly got it to come down, which was, I think, the bigger issue on this one. We'll know here in a minute. This could be completely goofed up. Once again, I've got a cutout for this. This is where I get really nervous. I had misgivings about cutting this because if the material is in too low of a position right now, well then I've just put myself almost potentially in the position of having an exposed hole if I raise the material up some. I don't think that in this case it's that big of a threat, but I have one at the other side where I did that, and now I've got two holes in it, one higher and one lower. It's not seen, and it's all clamped in there when it's put in, but still, it was right on the edge of being too much. I have no idea what this little flap is. I'm hoping once it gets all together, I'll get in there with a flashlight and be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I don't know quite yet. All right, so I'm going to put the back two bolts in. You can't put the front two in because the, well, actually I guess you can in this case. If we're not going to put the window in right now, they'll be in the way of the window or the curtain tack strip. That curtain tack strip overlaps it, so you have to kind of do it a piece at a time, where we'll put all this together, try to check it, and then if we have to add the window, I might have to take out a couple bolts to check that. I mean, in order to get it in to check it. But I do put that third bolt in, at the very least, just to make sure it's lined up before I tighten it all down. even if you don't tighten it all the way. This is the 15th time I've taken these things in and out. So, sort of gotten a little bit desensitized. Alright, and when it's going back in, the holes are slotted in the tack strip, so you have to pay attention to where that tack strip is in this plane. And what really determines where it's going to be is, we've already attached the material to it, so we can't really slide the material on it, without taking it apart. But at the end of the day, when this is tacked on, the front of this, at the window, the quarter window opening, it has to line up with this part of the frame. There's a little flap under here that gets wrapped around that portion of the frame and glued on. So that means, like, I took off my trim around this opening. I had it on initially because I needed a measurement from it to set this bow, which turns out to be the correct measure. But then I took it off because once I got that bow set, I didn't really need that anymore, and it was a bit in the way of putting this in that trim comes around this corner kind of a funky way. I think it's better if you set the top and then the trim goes on and kind of smushes into the top material, but at least it's not in the way when you're trying to establish where the top material is going to be. So this front binding, and I'll show it on the other side, needs to be right at or maybe a quarter inch behind where the quarter window turn is. It'll make sense when I show you in the video. So anyway, I'm going to slide this thing forward. Oops, I tightened up this one too much. And in my case, that's all the way up in the slots. It's just how I initially attach this stuff, or where I ended up, has it towards that end of the slots. So that's pretty good. It might be back a tiny bit too far, but I think it's all going to work out fine. So now this one. Got 3 more lags. Sort of doing this blind, I can't see the hole, so I just have to feel for it. Try to get that lag started. Alright, I'm going in. And the third one. And then again, setting this, you zoom into that. Okay, so the relationship relationship of this to that edge right there is sort of important. The real relationship that's important is this to this. Because when all this is on and stretched, this wraps around here and gets installed sort of like that. This is so loose that it's really hard to show it. But for now, I want this thing, maybe a 1/4 inch behind that line right there. These holes are all stripped to shit, so in fact, I'm going to grab a 3/8 inch. Okay. Alrighty. Now I'm going to stretch it back over the front to where I had it before. That's why that chalk line is important. I mean, I could stretch it a little tighter than that if I want, because it looked like it could use a little more. But at the very least, I want it at that chalk line. So I'm setting this in the center. Again, I've got my center mark. And I know that these seams go over this little notch in the front rail. And I'm going to pull it down a skosh. Out of staples. And once again, because this is the header bow, these are the shorter staples, 5/16. Okay. tension feels reasonably good. Actually, it might be a little too much, but that's all right. This is where it pays to have an electric. So that's pretty good right there. That's nice and tight. And when I glue this on, may help a little bit. Nah, I'm a little too far forward here. Oh, but that's all right. I got plenty. I didn't really set that thing where I wanted it. So let me loosen up these. So I'm just sliding this back using the slots in the tack strip. I'm going to have to take this end one out. There we go. And I'll lock that back in up front. All right, let's try it again. Oh, that's fantastic right there. And when I glue this in, it's going to have that pretty good. There's a tiny pucker right there, but I think for what I'm doing, this might be the end of it. Oh, this one looks great too. It is a little puckery right here, if puckery is a word. But it gets better when I pull this. When I heat that up, this one I've got right much to pull. So hopefully I can get that out. But the other thing is, I'm not done tightening this thing up. Like, I need to, now that I've got these where I want them, and I think that they're going to be fine, I'll move to the wire on, I'll put the window back in, I mean not the wire on, move to the tensioning cables, get those in, then I'll start setting the front. And at that time, I'll pull this back down to get more of a straight line